welcome to SBK Edge Rush Extra. Tom, look at this. I'm in the studio. You allowed me in.
I know, that's lovely stuff, isn't it? Do you like the studio?
I love the studio. It's going to be an NFL London game with me in the studio. Indeed, that's one of the 4 games we are looking at this week. Why don't we start with that? Saints, Vikings. Here we go again. So many storylines going into this game. Let's start with maybe the most important of all. Are we considering this a prime time game because it's in its own window and it's an NFL London game? If so, does that mean Kirk Cousins is going to blow it?
I mean, it's a great question. Kirk Cousins has a horrific record in primetime games. We've already seen that this season. I think we have to consider this a primetime game. You know, the audience is going to be massive. It's 2:30 UK time. It's, as you say, its own window. The main game starts at 6 p.m. And it's actually a really good clash between two teams where they've performed well, but not to their best level so far. Will we see the Saints suddenly bounce back? Will the Vikings go back to that form that we saw against the Packers? So I'm really looking forward to this now.
Saints got injury problems, which is frustrating for me, seeing as they were one of my dark horse picks at the start of the season, particularly Jameis Winston, their quarterback. Hurt his back a few weeks ago. He's been playing through that, but his performance has dipped, and we're seeing bad Jameis once again, aren't we?
Yeah, well, he's in one of my fantasy teams, so I would really like Jameis Winston to bounce back as well. But it's not just him either. Like Alvin Kamara is also struggling, and he's kind of been the rock bearer for years for the Saints, and he's been that guy that's always solid. And if the quarterback's not performing, you know, even when Drew Brees was injured and Taysom Hill took over, Kamara was always that solid rock. But he's not really going for, you know, those 100-yard, 2-touchdown games all the time. So yeah, the Saints are struggling right now, but this provides a perfect opportunity, I think, for them to bounce back. Whether I like to bet on them, well, that's a different matter.
So we might be seeing Andy Dalton. I don't know if Tottenham, this Hotspur Stadium is ready for Andy Dalton. NFL UK fans, the great Andy Dalton could be back in. Dalvin Cook, an injury concern on the other side for the Vikings. They're keeping a close eye on that. It's his shoulder, I believe. Got a good number for you here.
Go for it.
I did my research this week. So the Vikings are favourites, right? They're 2.5-point favourites. London favourites, if you take out any game in London over the years that doesn't include the Jags, London favourites, 18-3-1 straight up, 15-7 against the spread. How about that?
I mean, that's a phenomenal stat, to be fair. If there's any reason why you'd want to back the Vikings even more, there's your reason right now. And here's one more. The Vikings in England are 3-0 in their history. How many teams can say that? Not many is the answer. However, the Saints are close. They're 2-0 since 2007. So these are two teams that have come over here recently, performed very well. Maybe we will see this proper clash. I like the Vikings with you, though. I think a 2-point spread is 2.5-point spread is perfectly reasonable. There would be my play. I think Justin Jefferson, he's going to go off, isn't he?
Oh, I'm looking forward to seeing him live and in the flesh. Yeah, I'm leaning Vikes as well. All right, next up, Eagles, Jags. Two teams, wow, both trending absolutely in the right direction. We're more surprised about the Jags, I think. Trevor Lawrence looking like the player that we figured he would be. Then we had, of course, the Urban Meyer experiment last year, and we all know how that went. Now he's actually got a decent head coach, decent offensive line around him, some weapons around him too. He's looking like the real deal.
Well, yeah, in college for Clemson, Trevor Lawrence was the guy, wasn't he? Everyone was talking about him for years, thinking, you know, this is the next Peyton Manning, this is the next Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, etc. And he didn't really perform like that last year. But this year, yeah, he's bouncing back. Their victory over the Chargers was extremely impressive. But what you have to factor in is the Chargers was led that day by Justin Herbert, who's playing with half a rib cage, basically. Right. So that victory maybe was blown out of proportion. Prior to that, they played the Colts, led by Matt Ryan, who's having a terrible season so far. So I don't know how much we can read into those results, but they're definitely headed in the right direction, as you say.
And Jalen Hurts was, I think, the question mark around the Eagles' Super Bowl credentials. A lot of people buzzing and backing the Eagles going into this season.
Yep.
But the big if was, wow, is their quarterback good enough? Well, so far, so good. He's looking like the real deal, too.
I think he's been the big coming out story this year. Yeah. Obviously, he was very good in college for Alabama before he transferred. There was question marks last season. Was he a running quarterback? Was he a dual-purpose quarterback? Was he a throwing quarterback?
On the Alabama point, I think it's a great point because that showed to me his mental fortitude and strength. That to be at the number one college in America, to lose the starting gig to Tua, of course, and then to reboot yourself at a different college in the face of all that scrutiny and make that a success, that told me a lot in terms of his projected forward in terms of his credentials as an NFL starter.
Yeah, I mean, how many quarterbacks actually do that and then succeed in the NFL? Very few. Right. But Jalen Hurts has actually improved for that transfer, and that's very difficult to do from Alabama, the best college team. Yeah. I'm sure 9 out of 10 people would say the best college team out there. But to go to the Eagles and really perform, now he's got those weapons, which is why he's performing so well. He's got A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, who he's got a great connection with. I think the Eagles are a good play, 6.5-point favourites against the Jags. I think the Jags will live with them early. I think they'll score some touchdowns. But the Eagles have been so good this year. And we can't forget they're the only unbeaten team in the league.
Yeah, Eagles looking good. But I think the Jags, sneaky playoff team.
Yeah, sneaky playoff team for sure.
Sneaky Christian Kirk, sneaky MVP. All right, let's not go too far. I'd love to see that. Can you imagine? Raiders Broncos up next. Wow, talk about last chance saloon for the Raiders. Here's another stat for you. Raiders 0-3. That's for the first time since 2018, but since 1979, only 6 NFL teams that started 0-3 have made the playoffs. You got 0-4. Well, it's only the 92 Chargers, right? So it is looking like win or bust as far as the Raiders' playoff ambition is concerned.
For sure, and they signed some big names in the offseason. So Devontae Adams has gone there. He's been quiet in the last 2 games. I mean, I don't think I've ever said that about Devontae Adams at the Packers. He was the main guy every week. So his production's been quite disappointing recently. Josh McDaniels as well. I mean, there's question marks there. He had a meeting with the bosses last week.
That's never good when you're in week 3 starting. Everybody goes,
you're struggling.
You know, we were talking about this on the podcast. Shane Vereen, the great Shane Vereen, Super Bowl winning Shane Vereen, one of our guests this week on the Nat Coombs show. And Shane was talking about the pressure that's on Derek Carr's shoulders, which I don't think has been talked about enough. Josh McDaniels comes in, one of the great offensive minds of his generation, gives Carr Devontae Adams, and the expectation is you are going to contend in toughest division of football, one of the toughest divisions in football, and expecting them all to click straight away. And we've seen with Denver how difficult it is for an offense to start gelling from the get-go. I think it's a great point Shane made. I think it's been underestimated here that this expectation level of it's all going to be incredible from day one was maybe a bit of a reach. Yeah,
I think that is an excellent point. And I think I fall foul to that as well, because I thought the same about Denver. I thought they would be excellent from day one since Russell Wilson's gone there. But sometimes players don't necessarily gel into the new systems or with each other.
Right.
You can be a fantastic individual player, but you're joining a new team, completely different play calling, etc. And sometimes it doesn't come to fruition straight away. And we've kind of seen that with both of these teams. So that's why this matchup is extremely interesting. The Raiders are 2.5 points favourite on the spread. I don't know how you see this game, but I think it's very tricky to decipher who's going to win. You know from the previous episodes, I love Denver.
Yes.
But I'm finding it difficult this week
to see that love right now. Well, it's a good spot for them because Raiders defensively are not looking strong. There's a lot of talk about the Raiders offensive line being the weak link there. But I actually feel that the offensive line has held up pretty well. I mean, out of all the sacks Carr's taken, 5 were in one game, I think. And generally, outside of that, they've held up pretty well. Now, you could argue they're not strong enough to establish the ground game, and that's a bit of a problem. But if you look at the defensive numbers that the Raiders have been putting up, they're in the bottom, the lower echelons for a number of key stats. This could be the perfect spot for Russell Wilson to get rolling.
Yeah, and they've got real power weapons outside. They've got Cortland Sutton, they've got Jerry Jeudy, they've got Albert O at tight end as well, and 2 brilliant running backs, Melvin Gordon and obviously Javonte Williams. So there are plenty of options for Russell to go. We haven't even talked really about Russell's own strength.
Right.
Maybe his arm power is going and decreasing, which is a talking point. But aside from that, he's still a fantastic signal caller. I think the Broncos will win. I think they're the play, but it's hard to trust them. Last week, it was just defense. I think they've got the best defense in the league, which is why I would be playing the unders here. The line is set at 45.5 points. And I think that's pretty high for this matchup.
The unders is your play there. Okay. Final game, and a hell of a game it is set to be as well. Bucks, Chiefs, Mahomes, Brady. The Bucks D getting it done, of course. They have allowed the fewest points per game in the NFL this season at 9. They're ranked in the top 5 in total defense, yards allowed per play, rushing yards allowed, pretty much every single stat you can mention. They're a top 5 unit. If you look at the fine print there, though, and I'm not suggesting they're not an elite unit, but they played Dallas when Dak got injured and Cooper Rush came in, and Cooper Rush has been good, like fair play, but come on. Jameis with a broken back, and he threw about 15 picks in that game. And, of course, a Green Bay offense that was rolling opening drive and then was sluggish. Again, it hasn't really found its groove yet. So this is going to be the sternest test for them this season?
Oh, for sure. There's no debate about that, in my opinion. Look, I'm a Packers fan, so last week, I'm tempted to say, Packers are going to be the biggest test, but the Chiefs, that offensive weapon, the unit is just phenomenal. I fully expect them to put up points. Now, I think this will be the day where we see Tom Brady. It's kind of all or nothing with this offense. We need to see something because this is Tom Brady. This is Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Julio Jones. There needs to be something on offense, and there just hasn't been. Brady's been a frustrated character, to say the least.
Yeah.
I mean, with the new rules coming in about not breaking tablets and whatnot, I think he'd be frustrated again.
I still think he's breaking tablets, taking the fine. That's my hot take on this one. But yeah, it's a good point you make because they haven't been gelling, but quite obviously without Evans, he's back now after that suspension. Godwin's been banged up. Julio should be back for this game. That's certainly what the Bucks camp is saying. Of course, it's an altogether different proposition when he's got his A team back.
Well, of course, yeah. Tom Brady's not throwing to Scotty Miller every play. You know what I mean? He's throwing to proper wide receivers. No offense to Scotty Miller, of course.
Scotty Miller watches this show. That's a low blow.
Apologies, Scotty.
We love Scotty.
Yeah, but look, Russell Gage isn't going to be wide receiver number 1 this week. He'll have Evans back, as you say, Julio Jones, and they've both been wide receiver number 1s throughout their whole career. So Brady will have the option to try and put up points this week. Whether they do, I mean, that's up for debate. I think the Chiefs are a great bet. They're 1-point favourites on the spread. I would have them at 4 or 5 point favourites, I have to say. So the Chiefs are my play in this game now.
To road favourites there. The other thing with the Chiefs, of course, is their offense has been hit and miss too. Yep. Absolutely rolling out of the gates week 1, but haven't got the ground game going. Clyde Edwards-Helaire doesn't seem to yet. It's one of the most enigmatic players in the league. I think Sky Moore, the rookie, who had that muff punt, as you were saying before we started recording today, you said to me, I think that's really damaged his confidence.
Yeah.
I could see a number of the players in that collective that haven't yet stepped up having big games against the Bucs, despite the power of that D. Incidentally, another one, a final one for you, seeing as I'm rolling the stats out this week. Mahomes, 5-1 in games played against the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL. So when the going gets tough, Patrick Mahomes steps up. So you're leaning Chiefs on that one.
I'm leaning Chiefs, and for sure, like this is Patrick Mahomes, right? He does things for the cameras because he knows he can. When there's a challenge set in front of him, he will succeed. And I imagine he's going to do so here. I think Juju Smith-Schuster will have a big game.
Yeah.
Travis Kelce, of course, every single week has a big game. So yeah, I like the Chiefs.
Out of all of those, do you have a favourite play?
Oh, what a question. I think the unders in the Raiders-Broncos game, I think that's probably my favourite. But I also like the Eagles on the spread.
I love the fact you went unders. Propo on our Edge Rush show would love that. Of course, he is the unders king of Plumpton. That's what he backs unders every week. I mean, I just find that's a very negative way of playing it, but it's a sharp way of playing it for sure. Speaking of Edge Rush, you can catch that over on the Nat Coombs Show podcast feed. I mentioned Shane Vereen. I'm Mike Carson in the house as well. Now, all new SBK customers deposit £10 and you get £30 in free bets. T&Cs apply. There we go. I hope you've enjoyed the show, and I hope you enjoy London if you're going on Sunday. Tom, look after yourself.
You too.